healing. Welcome.
So much.
Well, this is going to be interesting today. But before getting into Ayurveda, we're interested in your personal meaning of beauty. You know, what beauty means to you, Vijaya?
Well, first of all, I love that you're focusing on just the idea of beauty, because in this world right now, there's so much distortion in the world, and beauty seems to bring the distortion back into a form of something that we might call God. But for me, beauty is love. When you think of something beautiful, you fall in love with it. And simultaneously, if you love someone or something, it becomes more beautiful. So I would say beauty is love for me. And I've noticed that when I'm spending time in nature, I fall back in love with myself, because nature is so awe-provoking that it actually brings me back into my heart. And so I love that we are talking about beauty. And I love that we can talk about beauty in regards to Ayurvedic medicine, because it reawakens our instinctual nature, and our instinctual nature is bringing us back in touch with nature, which again opens our heart.
I actually feel the same way. To me, beauty is love. Love is beauty. So I'm curious, what similarities do you see, you know, with Ayurveda and art?
Well, they are both a source of creativity. Ayurveda is sometimes called the science of life. That's how it translates. But a lot of people also call it the art of being. So here we are talking about art and beauty. And so Ayurveda would be the art of becoming human. And our art is an inspiration in life. And Ayurveda is the inspiration for human beings to fully live as a human being with full expression of all of their five senses, and to be able to fully embody and edify the divine.
Okay, so going, I guess, a little bit deeper with that Ayurveda and art, could you tell us, you know, what is the basis of Ayurveda? Is it a religion? Is it a philosophy? You know, what exactly is it?
Ayurveda is sacred knowledge stemming from Artava Veda, which is one of the four Vedas or scriptures in Hinduism. So although it has a connection to the religion Hinduism, you don't necessarily need to be Hindu to follow it. It was inspired at a time over 5,000 years ago. Some say even as old as 25,000 years ago, although we didn't have written material then, so it's hard to know. This information, I always say, is like the owner's manual that we got with our body when we came into this form, because we get one for our blender and our car, but we never get one for our body, right? Well, the Vedas are about how to live life in our fullest expression. So this particular stem of Ayurveda and Atharva Veda, it was devoted to health and well-being. So if you wanted to study something else like astrology or, you know, other forms, things like Vastu Shastra, which is Indian Feng Shui, it would allow you to understand those parts of life also, and how you could use structure to support your evolution. So they had it all down way back there thousands of years ago, when they were living in a time of truth. And we are in a really dark period right now, as we've all seen recently. And it's a period where we really need to turn back to these scriptures and say, remind me how it looked when there was light, because sometimes I can forget. And so the Vedas will help us to plug into that information so we don't forget, and to embody that also.
So we don't really have to follow Buddhism or Hinduism, though, to study Ayurveda.
Absolutely not. In fact, from Ayurveda, there's actually one particular philosophy that both Buddhists and Hindus follow, and it's called Sankhya philosophy. And Sankhya means enumeration. So it's the 24 steps it takes for consciousness, or what we call in Sanskrit Purusha, to come into form as individual human beings or animals or anything in nature. And so these 24 steps, we unpack them. And I always teach Sankhya at the beginning of any consultation with someone, so they can see how to unpack those steps that it took their spirit to come into form, and see where they might have made a mistake along the way. Sanskrit has a beautiful word. It's called pragya parad, which means the mistake of the intellect. And what it is it's letting someone see how they might have chosen a path that took them further and further away from their original design unknowingly. And so by unpacking Sankhya, we're able to see, oh, I took this course in this direction, and maybe I might want to change my course back and try this one because my life's not really working. And so it just gives us the paradigm to do that through. Ultimately will show up as our physical expression of energy in the body, which in Ayurveda, we have 3 body types called Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, which are 3 really unique and beautiful expressions of individuality.
How can we alchemize the 5 elements to maintain perfect health?
Well, that's a perfect question because we just talked about the 3 doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and each of those doshas have a ruling element. There's a total of 5 elements, but there's only 3 doshas. So each dosha has an element that it expresses when it's in balance or out of balance, in an extreme, or even sometimes it's a little diminished. And then if it gets too extreme, it may convert into the next element. So Vata is the principle of air. And so when someone is more of a Vata body type, air doesn't weigh a whole lot. So when you look at a Vata body type, they're usually thin and light, and they're very moving. They're going to use their hands like this all the time, or they might sit and twirl their hair or bounce their knee up and down, and they're restless, and they might have anxiety or nervousness or fear that gets accumulated in their body by too much air. And if that air accumulates too long, it might start to expand or express itself as space in the body. So if you, let's say, had a lot of gas in your intestine, you may end up having a lot more bloating. And where your flat belly defined your body one day, the next day your belly's out 3 or 4 inches further, and now you've taken up more space in the universe, right? So that's a wonderful way to see how air expressed itself in that body type. Whereas if a person had more fire in their body type, like someone like myself, fire digests and consumes information. So, and food, of course. So our minds are very consumptive, and our bodies can be very consumptive. We devour life. And because we devour life really quickly, we tend to get to the finish line sometimes faster than an air type person that tends to get sidetracked along the trails. If a Pitta and a Vata go on a hike together, Pittas are going to say, okay, we've got about 3 miles and we've got about an hour to do it. So let's keep going. Come on. We want to make our time. And Vata will say, wait, can I take a picture here? Oh, look, there's a bird. And, yes, I was just going to say that, Becky. Becky, you're a good Vata. And it's what creates your inspiration and creativity in your body. And all the while, I'm just trying to get a good workout and get to the finish line. So fire gets to the finish line quite quick. So they're the ones that tend to control things and to drive things and to make things happen, where the air person is here to inspire. Then there's a 3rd body type, and it's called the Kapha body type, and they're predominantly water. And when water starts to accumulate in the body might get fuller, so they tend to put on more weight. And water's very flowing and easygoing, and this body type is very easygoing. So whereas the Pitta is driving life, the Kapha person's going along with life. And yet sometimes water can stagnate, like a stream or a river might stagnate, and all of a sudden you've got dead fish, you've got leaves, you've got branches, you've got soap scum that might have washed down the river, or just scum of any kind. And pretty soon there's stagnation in their body. And they'll comment on things like, oh, I just eat food or look at food and I gain 10 pounds, and they don't even have to eat the food, because emotionally water is connected to how we feel. And if they feel like they're going to gain weight, their body will throw the water out and defend them from that food that now looks like the enemy. So when water stagnates too long, it can start to solidify. So that water could turn into earth, or let's say a tumor instead of a cyst. So you can see how the transformation of one element can turn into the other. I know I didn't cover how pitta transforms, but if you have a lot of fire inflammation in your body, you might first notice it emotionally, like you'll have anger and frustration and irritation and wanting to micromanage things. But after a while, you'll feel a lot of pressure in your body. And what's happening is, again, your body from the inflammations throwing water out into the extracellular fluid. And this person will say, whenever I'm under stress, it seems like I gain 5 or 10 pounds. And then a pitta person will go on vacation and throw all their stress and all that aside and say, you know what, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm turning off my cell phone and I'm just going to have fun. I'm going to eat ice cream. I'm going to eat foods I don't normally eat. And they go home 5 pounds thinner and they don't understand why sometimes, but it's because they've decompressed and they forced the water back into the cell again. So we're actually alchemizing these elements by everything we do. So just imagine if we had understanding of that and how we could dial that in and actually even put more of the elements in through the food or the herbs that we ate, and actually defined ourselves by our choice instead of by happenstance in life. So it's fun.
I find it fascinating that you are able to put your fingers on a person's wrist and detect their pulses in the different organs in their body. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. There's actually 7 different levels in the pulse. So if I was to go into a really deep level on the pulse versus a superficial level, if I went to the deepest level, I get what we call your Prakriti pulse, which is your original design. It occurred at the moment that your mother's egg and your father's sperm met. And at that moment, consciousness, Purusha, is turning into Prakriti, or nature or form. And so at that very moment that your father, representing the masculine energy in the universe, and your mother's egg meet, it's where Purusha and Prakriti meet together, which, by the way, is Einstein's theory of relativity that says E equals mc square, which is energy comes out of matter, which is nature, and consciousness, which is Purusha or God or intelligence, squared comes into form and creates more energy. So that very moment of conception is determining what happened for you to individuate out of consciousness into form. The next pulse that I take is called your Manas Prakriti, which means your mental constitution. And there's something really unique in the Vedas. And if you've studied yoga, you might know about these also. They're called the gunas, and what they are attributes of things in nature. So there's 3 of them, Rajas, Sattvas, and Tamas. So I determine by your pulse which one of those is your driving force. So Rajas guna has to do with creativity and activity. Sattvas gunas has to do with purity and essential nature. And Tamas gunas has to do with destruction and inertia. So I can determine what type of personality a person is. Are they very creative? Do they go out into the world and do they make things happen? Then do they look for a feedback loop from the outside world to applaud them and say, oh, that was great. And then they say, oh, I want to do that again. That felt really good to get love and approval, right? But if somebody goes, oh, that was horrible, don't ever do that again, then they will alter their behavior. And pretty soon, if they do that enough times, they don't even really know who they are, because they're kind of like a marionette on a string that can be yanked by whoever's out there telling them if their performance was good or bad. So they lose themselves in the lila, we say, or the play of life. The second guna has to do with essence and purity. So these individuals, their mantra is go within or go without. It's not out there, it's in here. So they drive inward. If someone says, oh, well, what do you think about this? Would you be willing to help, let's say, on this board? Or would you be willing to do this, for our organization? Or can you help me in this way? They'd say, let me check in and I'll get back with you tomorrow. They're not going to have that knee-jerk response to just say, oh, yeah, I'll help you. I want you to love me, right? They'll check in and see if it's part of their design to actually get involved in that. And they won't just do it to get love and approval. They've gone inward. They know who they are. They don't need to seek for that. But what can happen with those individuals sometimes is they might find that because they spend so much time with themselves and on themselves, they can become narcissists, they can become hypochondriacs, or they can have spiritual pride. So when we take these pulses and find these out, I can understand how I'm going to deal with this individual. So that's a very good pulse to know. And then there's, of course, the destructive personality type. And I always joke that they're never sitting at the chair across from on my desk, because they're not usually interested in doing self-improvement work like the sattvic person, or caring what somebody else tells them about themselves. Their whole way of being is like, what you see is what you get. If you don't like it, get out of my life, and I'm going to do what I want to do. And they're a little bit rebellious. So we really can get a lot of information just out of that second level of pulse. The next level above that, so we're moving from deep to subtle, is all the tissue systems. So there's 7 tissue systems that I can feel. And then we move up another level, and there's something that's really unique to Ayurveda. And one of them is really, I think, important when we're talking about beauty. The 3 are called prana, tejas, and ojas. So prana is your life force. How much spirit is coming into this individual's body? By rating their pulse, I can see, are they inspirited, or are they, is there spirit out here, and maybe they're a trembling mess and there's a lot of air here. But prana, this life force, is air that's brought our spirit down, and now we are embodied spirit. So that's a good thing to know how much this person has in their being. The second one, which is the one that's so connected to beauty, is something that we've never really talked about in our culture too much, but it's called tejas. And what tejas is, it's our illumination, our charisma, our magnetism. How bright is our light, and how well does that light warm up our being and help our brain to discriminate? So someone that has a lot of tejas usually can walk into the room, and they're so beautiful that even if you don't see them, you're pulled to turn and look and say, who just came into the room? Because their magnetism is so big that it draws people to them. So energy in the universe is either attractive or magnetic, or, and on one level, or it's repelling on the other. It's like a scale between those. So we can either be magnetic or attractive, or we can be repelling. So the more tejas you have, the more magnetic or attractive you'll be. The more pitta or fire you have, if you're micromanaging people or being angry and controlling, you're probably going to start repelling them away. So what causes us to have fire in the form of pitta or tejas, the 2 opposites, is how well we digested life, food, and understanding. So we want to look at how well that occurred. And in that particular level of pulse, we can find that. And then the equivalent to kapha, that third body type, is something we call ojas. And ojas is all the juice in our body. So when someone's juicy, you just notice that they're yummy and you want to be around them. They want to hug you up and love you up, and they're nourishing, and they want to feed you and all that. So when we have a lot of ojas in our body, our hormonal levels are really high and we stay youthful for long periods of time. Our nutritional levels are high, and our hydration level in the cell is really high. Versus when kapha goes high, we may end up having either too much phlegm, fat, or mucus in our body, and that doesn't really do us a whole lot of good. So again, it's a digestive issue. So these 3 things are extremely important to check. We also check 5 other things on the next level up that are related to each one of those. And there's 5 substations where those things are stored. I won't get into those, but it's a very subtle level, and not too many people can even take this level of pulse, because I have to go up 5 levels, and then on each finger, there's one for each of the doshas, I have to feel 5 pulses on one finger. I felt like my brain was going to blow up when I was learning this information. But once you learn it and you know it, it's like, wow, it's invaluable that you can find exactly where that ojas or where that prana is missing, and how can I get it back in there by the herbs that I'm going to use. Then I feel all 12 organs in the body. We feel 6 on each arm. And then I go to feel something called your manas vikruti, which is your mental imbalance. So we feel those gunas, rajas, sattvas, and tamas again, and see where the mind is. Maybe somebody started out very pure and sattvic in their original nature, but life took over and now they're very rajasic. And I can see that rajas went up, and I will call them back to themselves. And I'll say, look, it's extremely important for your body type to meditate every day. You've got to go inward before you even get out of bed. You feel like you can't sit and meditate, just close your eyes and say, what is it that I want for myself today? What am I looking to manifest or create in my life? What's my art going to be in the way that I live? So that's a wonderful thing to be able to know, obviously. And then the very last thing I check in the pulse is your current vata, pitta, and kapha, which is called your vikruti, or your imbalanced state. So again, I can see how the doshas have gone out of balance. So the word dosha actually in English means blemish. Although people say, what dosha are you? It really means blemish. So we're looking to see, did you accumulate more of the elements in your body than you actually came in with? It's like going on vacation and you go with a somewhat empty suitcase and you come home and you can barely fit everything in it, right? Because you on vacation have to buy all these things. Well, in life, we just pick up stuff along the way, right? And now we're carrying all this extra baggage. So that's what's in our Vikruti. So I help people to eliminate, clean their suitcase out a little bit and create the most beautiful being dressed in their most favorite. And that way they're actually generating what they came in to do, instead of, the baggage that we all get imploded on us, usually in our childhood more than anything. And then we just start repeating those patterns over again. So.
Wow, that's so fascinating. And I've been treated by you, so I'm aware of, how you take my pulse, and then you're able to put a whole blend of herbs together to balance out the doshas and what might be out of balance. But I was wondering,
as an artist myself, I'm always trying to create beauty. So even when I'm putting the herbs, and I might have done this with you sometime, Becky, I always, when I'm dropping the herbs in the bowl, I put them all separately so that each person can see before I start mixing the bowl up. This beautiful mandala that comes out of it. And there's maybe bright hibiscus flowers in there, or turmeric, or, different herbs that have these beautiful colors to them. And people can see, wow, this is all going to go together and create this new magical experience in my life. And it's like, meditating on a beautiful tanka or mandala and seeing how it might synthesize into our consciousness and into our body. So one of the things that I've been doing a lot in the last maybe 10 years or so that I just love is I take the 5 elements, ether being the most subtle, air, the second to the most subtle, then fire, water, and earth, and see how I can use these elements to generate something in my life and also to erase something in my life. So we create from nothing into something, and we uncreate from something back into nothing, right? So if we look at the 5 elements, and this is how an artist could even create on a canvas, you take an empty canvas, right? And that's like empty space or ether. Then what does the artist do? She takes her paintbrush and she dips it in the color and she strokes. That stroke is a movement, and movement is governed by air. So now she's actually moved the space into something else by her stroke, and she's generated something new out of it. Now that's going to inspire our mind, and it can also touch us, it can move us, or it can inspire us. That's what air does. So now our mind goes, oh, that reminds me of this, or that makes me feel that, or, we start to come into an idea in our mind, and now we hold that idea and we live from that idea, and then we keep painting away. And now we're starting to be inspired by what's on the canvas, right? So in our childhood, our parents are touch, moving, and inspiring us, especially for the first 7 years of our life when we're just like little sponges and sucking it all up. And what can happen is our parents can touch us in a really wonderful way, like stroking our hair before we go to sleep, but they can touch us in the wrong way, right? And they can move us in a beautiful way, like rocking us to sleep, but they could shake us and spank us or whatever too. And that would not be the movement that we would want to really take on, but it's going to make an impression on us. And they can inspire us to do beautiful work in the world or to do crime, let's say. Now, once they put those impressions in our mind, those impressions are how we're viewing life. And fire, the next element, is how we see. Fire in the sky, the big sun, the ball of fire in the sky allows us to see. And if we had no sun, we would not see a thing because it would be pitch dark. So the sun in our third eye or the fire in our belly is helping us to take those impressions and digest them into being. So fire is the element of transformation. So once we digest that and say, oh, that must mean that about me. My father said I was X, Y, or Z. And now I believe that about myself. And I'm going to live from that place. Now I walk out into my world with this imprint on my mind, just like Masaru Emoto's work, where he would put a word like love and gratitude on a bottle of water and freeze the water and then take a picture of the crystalline structure that the water made. And it made the most beautiful structure. Whereas if he said, I hate you, I want to kill you, which is one of the photos I saw that he had done, it looked like a cancer cell. So these impressions in our mind are being digested by us every moment that we focus on them. And they're making impressions on the water in our body, which is the fourth element. And we're about 85 to 90% water. So guess what? We're being impressed from our childhood over and over again as we run these tapes in our mind, which are our belief systems, our understandings, our paradigms, our impressions. And those actually are informing how the water in our body is going to be expressed. So we have 7 chakras, and each one has a gland behind it. And if my chakra takes in information from the outside, somebody that's going to touch, move, and inspire me again, and I run it through the impression from my past, then I'm going to react to that person as if I already know how they're going to be with me, because they may remind me of something that pulls up an impression. And now, let's say I have bad experiences from men in my childhood. It could be as simple as the male doctor spanked me when I was born. And as a baby, I don't even know male, female, but I think, okay, that energy feels not safe. And then I come home and I'm screaming because I've got colic or something. And my father shakes me and says, stop crying, right? And then maybe I have my first lover, when I'm a preteen, and he breaks my heart. And then I get married and my husband has an affair. And I walk around thinking, men hurt me. Gosh, I don't trust men. Well, guess what? When we start informing the water in our body, we start sending out hormones in our body like epinephrine, the fight or flight hormone. Mm-hmm. And that hormone, when it leaves our body, it turns into what we call a pheromone. And a pheromone sends out a message that says, men over here hurt me. It's the same sentence, men hurt me, but you put a comma there and all of a sudden it has a whole new meaning. So we're putting out this smell, which is connected to the earth element in the form of pheromones that draw exactly to us the same resonance that we started the impression with. So if we don't like how our life is going, we need to get out the Etch-a-Sketch and shake it, until we have an empty canvas again. And so what we can do is we can peel these elements backwards. We see that our life isn't working. We see we might have a disease in our body. Ask ourselves, what was I feeling right before this disease came on? Or what was I feeling right before I went out for that walk where I got attacked by someone, right? Right. Oh, I was feeling X, Y, and Z. Well, why did I think that? Why was I feeling that, right? We go back into our belief systems. Well, where did I learn those belief systems? Oh, yeah, well, my father or my mother or my uncle or whatever. Okay, well, who am I before any impression came in? We get back to empty space again. And we can do that back and forth until we write the script the way we want to. And that's the alchemy of being, and it's just like using paints on a canvas or anything. So it's wonderful to be an artist and to paint, and Vatas love doing that. Pittas love to be artists in the kitchen and cooking with fire, and Kaphas love to be an artist by creating home that feels safe and comfortable and all that. But what if we could just make our body our art, that our body was our canvas, and that we could actually revive our body and have a new canvas every day if we could just remember. So it's the number of moments that we remember who we are that we're enlightened, and the number of moments that we forget who we are, we're unconscious. So at the end of our life, if we forgot 150,000 times and we remembered 150,001 times, we've won the game, right? We just have to keep remembering. So it's a fun way to wake up. It just keeps being a new way to say, okay, well, I forgot. Now I'm going to wake up again and try again. And it becomes our sadhana, or our practice. So.
Wow. Well, what a lovely introduction to Ayurveda.
Yeah.
and bringing the awareness to all of, that everything's connected, our mind, body, and spirit is, all connected, and you work with all of those parts. And if someone would want to do a PanchaKarma with you, or have you consult with them, how would they reach you?
What they could do is go to my website, which is www.livingrasa.com, which is LIVING, and then Rasa, RASA.com. So the word rasa means juiciness and rapport and connectedness. It means taste. It means your immune system. So my whole, idea about this is that I just want to generate that people feel one and connected with one another. And how can we create that juicy connection with one another by understanding that we all come from the same source and we're being flooded equally. And we just have to remember the rasa, or the mood of, the lila of life, being that we're lovers and we've all come back to love one another. So that's why the name is Living Rasa, just so people can see that. But once you get on there, there's a place to actually book an appointment, or if you want to contact me by telephone or email, that will be there also.
Well, I'm so happy that I've been able to experience the PanchaKarma, because, it's not just addressing the physical issues, but it's all the mental and spiritual issues as well. And you helped me realize there's been a lot of conditioning, and why would I think that way? Well, it came from somewhere in my past, and it was so helpful, and you're so nourishing, and such a heavenly energy around you. And so I wish everybody could experience it, and we're so grateful that you could be a part of this beauty of creativity, because it's a whole nother angle into creativity. And so thank you so much.
Yeah, I find that people that are really loving themselves allow themselves to be more artistic and more creative and all of that, because they trust their process and they trust putting their beauty out into the world, So if you have good self-esteem, which Ayurveda, I think, really increases, it's going to help that. There's a new program that I've just been asked to teach for, and it's called AyurvedicLiving.com. You can get on that website, and it's going to be a bunch of women leaders in Ayurveda all coming together to teach Ayurvedic living principles. And it's going to be, I think, one of the better programs, because it's not about just, intellect and just learning, technique, or even religious philosophy or anything like that. It's more, how can you incorporate some of these principles into your daily life with your family, your children, your workplace, and how can you generate more love? So like when you said, Becky, you're so nurturing. Being a pitta's, I wouldn't say that's my forte as a pitta. Pittas are more like the intelligence, not the nurturing. That's more of a kapha thing. But by knowing that I'm trying to learn how to help you incorporate more ojas into your body, and how to, help you do that, that allows me to be more nurturing when maybe that's not my nature per se. So I don't have to be bound by my nature either. And so ojas is something that's outside of the emotional level, and I can just give you what you need to feel nurtured, versus thinking, oh, I'm not the loving type, or the, emotional type, or whatever that might be. So I love that, because it steps me outside of my conditioning that says, oh, my father never hugged me, or my mother never, nurtured me the way that I wanted to. And almost every kid says that, right? We can step outside that and just say, oh, I'm just going to help this person increase their ojas by being juicy and loving and all that with them. And, it does take us out of our conditioning that way, which I really like. So.
Well, I appreciate all of your wisdom and knowledge, and all your years of study have paid off, because you're really helping a lot of people.
Thank you so much, Becky.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vijaya. Okay. Absolutely wonderful. I had no idea it was that detailed.
Yeah, a lot of people say this is the information I didn't even know I didn't know. It's pretty obscure, but when you learn it or hear it, people also say, I feel like I already knew it though, because it's instinctual wisdom. In fact, there's something beautiful about language. And I think, Becky, you and I were talking about this the other day, how language creates form, right? And so the Sanskrit language, along with there's a total of 5 different primordial languages: Sanskrit, Latin, Aramaic, Greek, and Hebrew. And these languages being primordial means that they were original languages that had no different dialects or slang involved in the speaking of these languages. And so when they were spoken back in time, they could generate form through the word. So we speak a lot of Sanskrit, as you heard me say today. And what that does is these primordial languages actually stimulate this limbic part of our brain. And that's our instinctual brain. So when we hear these words, it unlocks our instinct, and we're able to get back into our instinctual mind that knows, like a squirrel, when to hibernate, or what food to eat, or what animals to be afraid of, right? We instinctually know how to be human when we open up that part of our brain and we start living from our instinct again. So now we get back in rhythm with nature. So I love that the language hasn't been erased out of this method, so that we can, even if we don't understand the words, we can actually be affected by the sound. So
raise our vibration with them.
Right, that's right.
It's such an ancient language. They were designed to raise our vibration. Absolutely. Right?
Yeah. So like chanting a mantra or anything like that's going to definitely raise our frequency.
Well, it's fascinating, and I could talk to you all day long about this, because it's just there's so much information. But we really appreciate having you on our show, and I look forward to seeing you again someday in Laguna.
So much, and I hope you do get to Laguna soon. And Carol, maybe someday I'll get to meet you in person.
You never know. I'm in Pasadena.
Oh, that's not too far.
Yeah, it's not too far.
Well, if we can get Becky to California, maybe that can happen.
That would be a great plan.
Road trip. All right. You take care. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Take care, Vijaya.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.